Baltimore City. It's a Dish with Deeva show. Here she is, the one and only K-Cee Deeva.
Yeah, man, I like my little ditty there. Shout out to my baby bro who did the theme music, created that from scratch, composed it for me. Thank you, baby bro. And shout out to my homie Trelante for doing the intro there for me. Somebody asked me, was that Snoop Dogg? And I fell out laughing. And then now every time I hear it, I can't get Snoop Dogg out of my head. Anywho, hey peeps, what up? It's your girl K-Cee Deeva, and this is another edition of Dish with Deeva. I am so excited to be here, and I'm even more excited to celebrate Black History Month, having different guests on. My guest today, wow, so much to say. We'll get to him in just a minute, but before we do, you know the drill. Get a pen if you need it. Check your memory bank. But if you want to come on the show, if you have a guest in mind, someone that's an entrepreneur, an artist, an entertainer, all of the above, doing something cool and interesting in C-Town, hit me up at MZ Deeva. You see how K-Cee Deeva is spelled on the screen there. On Instagram, K-Cee Deeva Shows on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe. And also K-Cee Deeva on Facebook. So real easy to find me. All right. So in honor of Black History Month, you know, I really tried to put some thought into the folks that I wanted to have on the show. Week before last, we had my good friend and mentor, Paul Hawley, who was a journalist with Channel 11 many years ago, now with Premier Blue Cross, doing some cool things in the community and for the community as their lead donations person. And today I have with me Chris Bernard Bennett, Chris B, or B as I like to call him, because I have known this man since kindergarten. That's how far we go back. You know, when people say, oh yeah, I've known them for a long time, I've known them 20 years. No. It's been much more than that. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, K-Cee?
Always good to see you. Yes, always good to see you. Always fun, you know, and you are the CEO and publisher of the Seattle Medium newspaper. And as I like to joke and say, kind of joking, but really not, unless you've been under a rock the last, is it 52 years?
We're in our 53rd year.
53 years. You don't know about the Seattle Medium. How could you not? Seattle Medium has been a pillar in the community as the largest Black newspaper in Seattle, Washington, and has done so many things in the community. So again, as I thought about Black History Month and who I wanted to talk to, hear from, the Seattle Medium definitely was top of my list. So Chris, let's go ahead and dive right in. For folks who maybe aren't familiar with the Seattle Medium newspaper, celebrating 53 years this year. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
How has it felt? How's that journey been?
You know, you really don't think about the amount that the time span until somebody actually mentions and say, you guys been doing this work for so long. Even when I look back at my own career, you know, I have to think back to actually how long I've been doing this type of work. And, you know, I tell people, you know, all the time that I really start from when I actually finished school and started, because if I told you when I really started there, you're going to look at me and not believe what I'm telling you. So, but you know, it's been a journey. It's been interesting. We've, you know, the things that we do, people look at us as a newspaper and information source, but you know, we're really providing vital information that helps improve the quality of life of Black folks and other underserved communities here in the Pacific Northwest. And they talk about the importance of having a voice in media. And here in a place like Seattle, of all places, people like, you know, are there Black folks there? Yeah, there are Black folks here. And the other thing that you have to understand too is that there's a reason why we had the oldest branch, the NAACP, west of the Mississippi, because there were problems that Black folks were having here.
Yeah.
A long time ago, and they still do. And we need to be able to chronicle our successes and chronicle the people who are doing great things in the community, but as well as shed light on issues of concern that are impacting our community in a negative way. So hopefully people in decision-making capacities can create some change for the better, not just for us, but for everybody here. And so, you know, the work that we do is very important to the fiber of our community, and so many people are impacted by things that we have done, but also things that we've reported on that other people have done that have impacted their lives in ways that they don't even know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's important to establish, when I think of the Seattle Medium newspaper, KRIZ radio, under the same umbrella, it's so much more than just a news source, right? A newspaper or radio station. You've interviewed everyone under the sun, both entities. But it goes far beyond that, because the impact that an organization like the Seattle Medium has had in the Black community in particular is not only vital, but imperative, right? We're just talking before we went on about the Support Black Orgs initiative that you all have just recently started. Just yet another one of many initiatives and events and things that you've done in the community. Talk about this one in particular.
Yeah, it's important that we recognize and support institutions in our community. And, over the years, and we can get into this a little later, our entities have had their own, struggles, for lack of a better term, just being a Black business here in the Pacific Northwest. But we also recognize that there are other institutions and pockets of organizations in our community that also need our support and assistance. And so when you look at the headlines and you see that a lot of these major nonprofits are having issues with donations and volunteerism and things of that nature, and I had to sit back and think about, how is that impacting, our local Black nonprofit organizations who have been doing, much more with less for years. And, some of them, they have what I call their budget process is what I call my budget, right? Where the people involved, whatever their personal budget is what the budget of the organization is, because they're actually putting a lot of their own time and money and resources into these organizations.
Right.
To provide, safety nets for our community. And so, if we can't support our own and we can't do for ourselves, we can't expect anybody else to do it. And so we need to be able to support our local nonprofit organizations that are doing the work in the community, have continued doing it in a number of ways. And you don't have to provide them with money all the time, but you can volunteer. Some of them just need somebody who can just answer the phone or return calls. Some of them need help just setting up for events or for their programming. Yes, they can also use money. And so whichever way people can help out, we're asking people to help out with different organizations. We got a whole realm of organizations, from youth mentorship programs to organizations like the Urban League and the Central Area Senior Center, that all could use assistance and support. And that used to be how our community evolved, is that people would volunteer their time for different organizations. These organizations grew into where they are now. And unfortunately now, because we're so spread out, that these organizations are still there serving a purpose, but they don't necessarily get the resources they need in terms of volunteerism, of just bodies who can do different little tasks. And also from a monetary perspective, I mean, everybody's taken a hit during COVID, but some people can still use a tax write-off, and some people can still spare a few dollars here and there, or they can just support the program or initiative that a lot of these organizations have. So we have a website that we put up, and it's basically it's a volunteer mobilization platform, and it's called supportblackorgs.com. And people can go there and read up about the different organizations in our community. They can look at the volunteer opportunities. They can volunteer. They can donate. If there's programming in place that you or somebody that can take advantage of, there's information about the different program that they have as well. And so we're just asking people to take a look there, and the list is going to continue to grow. So if anybody has any organization they think should be a part of it, they can feel free to send us an email through the platform, or people can go sign up themselves and contact us, and we'd be more than happy to get them up on the platform so they can also get some support here from the community. But I say all that to say we do have a number of initiatives that we've taken on over the years. We've food drives.
Okay, I'm gonna pause you there though. I want to pause you there, and we'll go back to that because I want to dive a little bit deeper into. I think that first of all, I think it's great that you guys have this website now, supportblackorgs.com. People can go and see what the need is and where the need is. One of the things that I've struggled with over the years, as a native born and raised Seattle, such as yourself, is, I look at other communities and they really do seem to support each other, financially, showing up, doing the volunteering. I've always kind of felt like our community was lacking a little bit in that. And I'm not sure if that's because, lack of because there is a small number of us here. Is it because people just aren't aware of what the need, is out there? People aren't really speaking up and saying, hey, why do you think that is? I'm glad to see now that, once again, your organization is saying, hey, especially after COVID, right? There's even a greater need to support our folks in our community. But, why hasn't that just always been a natural thing?
I think that it has been. I think for quite a few generations that our community was so close knit, and everybody kind of lived it. That's when we had an actual Black neighborhood or Black neighborhoods. We still have a Black community. We just don't no longer have Black neighborhoods, and so it's more difficult to connect. And a lot of these organizations really just don't have the resources or the time to be able to do PR work, outreach, fundraise, all these different things. Where before, they could be picking up something to eat or at the grocery store and talking to people about what they're doing. And now everything's so spread out and people are in these little pockets and vacuums. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult for people to connect. That's one of the reasons why we started this initiative. So we can also have platforms where we're utilizing our media resources to tell the stories of these organizations, talk about their programming, talk about their impact, what they're doing in the community to create some more awareness. People like, oh, I didn't know that the Central Area Senior Center was doing that. I didn't know that Brave was doing this. I didn't know that CAY was doing this. I remember CAY, but I haven't heard about them in a while.
Right.
And so it's a focal point that we've placed here in our community so that we can not only provide information and resources and inform people what they're doing, but across the board so we can create some awareness, because I think awareness is the main thing. And then, quite frankly, a lot of these organizations are having young people, a niece, a nephew, somebody, a cousin, a daughter, manage their social media and think that as they're posting stuff to social media, that's getting out to the mass as well. It's getting out to the people who are already in your circle, but it's not getting out to the masses. You never know who's out there in a broader context who can support you in a major way or be one of your major employees or whatever that is, that really can help move the needle what you're doing as an organization. So I think it's a combination of different things that have led to that, with everybody being spread out as well. But I think that, as long as we concentrate as a community on what we need to do internally and start networking and coming together for certain things, I think we can turn the tide with that.
I think that's a great point. And, I think, I've had people say, I've actually had people saying, you probably heard this too, in your lifetime. Well, I don't understand why we need like a Black newspaper, or an Asian newspaper or Hispanic newspaper, which puzzles me for one. But for those who don't know, it's vital to our communities because the Seattle Times, the larger entities, former Cube 93, they aren't going to tell our stories. They aren't going to tell our stories, and they're definitely not going to tell them in the way that affects us and the best light and the best, because they haven't lived it. They don't have the lived experience. So I just want to kind of point that out, why organizations like the Seattle Medium are so important and so vital to the community. It's not just a newspaper. These are businesses and stories of the community that are told by folks in the community. But
one thing that's important to note is that, most of our organizations, including the Black media, Black press across the country, were formed out of necessity, right? And we're in Black History Month right now. So we talk about all these different things that people accomplished during Black History Month. And I'm always reminded of all the different inventors. And I kind of joke about them a little bit, but a lot of these things were invented out of necessity, right? The fact that you had African-American who invented the stoplight, right? Why was that necessary? More than likely, everybody was able to cross the street except for Black folks. And so he's like, I need to create a mechanism so it's safe for us to cross the street. You look at things like the fountain pen, and you look at the fire extinguisher and the fire escape. Why did Black folks have to invent the fire extinguisher and a fire escape? Maybe because people were coming to their house in the middle of the night trying to set their house on fire and they needed to get out. The first thing they tried to put out the fire, that's number one. If that didn't work, then you needed a way to get out of your house. So those things were out of necessity. As
Yeah.
it relates to the media, the Black press was formed. The first Black newspaper in America was Freedom's Journal in 1827. And on their front page, they said in an editorial that we need to plead our own cause, for too long others have pled our cause for us, which means that they need to be able to tell their own story and tell their own truth, and not have somebody else provide their interpretation of
Mm-hmm.
what they want people to believe that our truth is. And so
Mm-hmm.
if we're not telling these stories, we're not telling our own stories, who's going
Mm-hmm.
to tell it? How many times people looked at the media and say, why are they distorting the truths in our neighborhoods? Why are they making it look like all our young people are criminals and gang members and drug dealers and going into incarceration and going into jails and prisons, when that's not necessarily true? They're not talking about our kids who are doing well. They're talking about the ones who were throwing up red flags, which is not the majority of our kids in our community. And so, and they're not talking about our businesses. They're not talking about our community leaders. They're not talking about a whole number of things. They're not going to tell the story of all the scholarship funds that an organization like the UNCF and the Links and other organizations are giving out each year to young kids going to school. They're not going to talk about Black college tours that are taking place so people can get exposed to Black colleges across the country. They're just not going to tell those positive stories like we can and that we will in our community. So, like I said, it's a necessity, and it's needed now more than ever, that the narratives are getting changed and people keep talking about, and you see the comments for stories in our publication and major publications where people are just negative about what's going on in our community. They want to portray us in a certain way, and we're not. And so we've got to be able to provide a narrative that gives people a reality of what is actually taking place in our community. Now, some of it's not all good, and that's true, but we've also got a lot of good that we need to share as well.
Exactly. So I want to touch on, you mentioned social media a little bit earlier. And, as a former journalist myself, it's, it never ceases to amaze me, just the amount of flat out junk that is on social media. And what's more concerning is that people really buy into a lot of, it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, it's on TikTok. So it must be a reality. It must be true. But, and then a few days later, you hear the truth from whoever the story might have been about, and, the real facts come out and so on. Not to say it's all bad. There's some good to having social media as an added media source, but I'm just curious from your standpoint. Do you see social media as more of a hindrance, or it's more of a good addition into what, say, something like you all are doing?
It's half empty, half full. It's 50-50, right? In one way, social media helps you get your information out. In another way, it hinders stuff and makes it more difficult, because, number one, so many people have gotten away from just a reliable source of information, right? They see something on the internet, they say, oh, if it's on the internet, it must be true. That's not necessarily true. And because people aren't doing any research, they're not doing any fact checking,
right.
Which is the same way we looked at media outlets, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? You had organizations like the Seattle Medium, the Afro, you had the New York Times, the Washington Post, Seattle Times, whoever you want to see, that people would trust to a certain extent with their information, depending on what they were presenting. But you also had, I forgot, the Stars of the World and the Inquirer and all those things. Yeah, with all these crazy headlines about, Michael Jackson's firstborn child is an alien, stuff that you just knew was just crazy and far-fetched, right? And you just kind of ignored it. However, with social media now and the internet, there's not a big filter with stuff like that, natural filter that people have. So when they see stuff, they take it as word, and other people don't even read stories. I mean, they read headlines these days, to be honest.
Yeah.
They read a headline and they start making comments about a story that they haven't even read, and so that in itself is dangerous as well. So I think, we just have to be cautious with it. We have to recognize that it's a part of the world that we live in these days, but we have to really look at the source, where it's coming from and what they're talking about, and to make some decisions based upon that before we just kind of take stuff and just run with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I agree with people just, taking a headline and running with it, and it just makes, to me, it's so irresponsible, and it's dangerous, I mean, because there's some crazy stuff out there, you can't just take a headline and run with it. So let's circle back to, you started kind of telling us about some of the other initiatives that the Seattle Medium has done. Talk a little bit about some of those and the impact it's had on the Black community.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to note is that, the things that we're just a vehicle, right? That allows the community to do a lot of positive things in our community and great things. And so with that, we have a number of initiatives that we've done over the years, but we couldn't done it without the support of the community. The community actually are the ones who have been able to do this, right? When we have a food drive, the community shows up and they donate food for the less fortunate in our community to make sure that people have food on the table during times of year where they might not otherwise have to go without. When we have our coat drives, they're making sure they're bringing coats. So especially with young kids in our community can have coats to go to school, and so they're not out there waiting on a bus, freezing and wet. And their parents and other people actually have coats as well. When we talk about having a toy drive as well, we're not the ones, the Seattle Medium and our staff, we're not the ones going out there, buying these toys and making all these donations, thousands and thousands of toys. We do we do contribute, but the contribution that we have is small compared to the number of people who make sure that they bring thousands of items every time we have a call to action. I can remember when there was a call to action for Hurricane Katrina and Rita, and we raised a lot of resources and sent generators down there to families down in those areas that were affected. I can think about the Oklahoma City bombing, where we got word that the Red Cross was just bypassing the African-American community, just driving either through it or around it and not stopping to help people. And we were able to raise over $96,000 in about 3 days to send to direct support to people down there in Oklahoma City. And so, but that's not something that we did. We were just a vehicle. The community was able to do it. And so we're a focal point, we're a rally point for the community to be able to do some things. And we are more than happy to be able to be in a position to do it, but more than happily to do it and to give the credit to the community for supporting these different initiatives that I think are important, not here just locally, but also across the country.
Absolutely. I love it. So let me ask you this. Do you think there will ever be a day where, as I like to call it, traditional, news reporting, journalism will kind of go away? I mean, we're in this age of technology, social media. People seem to go to their phones or, first for news. Yet you all are still holding strong with actual physical papers. Because I'm one of those people, I still like books. I have 2 Kindles that were gifted to me years ago, and I still like the actual feel of a book. You know what I mean? I like the feel of a newspaper if I'm going to read the news, And I know a lot of folks are still like that. Do you think that at some point in time, though, it's just all going to be technology?
At some point in time, yes. However, there's a difference in the adaptation as it relates to the general market than as it relates to the African American and the Black market, right? And it's going to accelerate a little bit when this next generation comes up, because these kids now are just doing everything is digital and electronic. But we still have people who like the look, feel, portability, the convenience of a printed publication. The thing that we as a newspaper have to do in order to stay relevant is we have to be prepared and continue to meet people where they are, right? So, we have to make sure that we have the digital offerings, and then our website is in place. Our website's up to date every single day, so people can go there and get news information they choose to do, go onto our website. We need to make sure that it's rendering properly depending on how they're viewing it. If they're viewing it on their phone, it's a different screen. If they're doing it on the tablet, it's a different screen. If they're using it on a PC, it's a different screen. And so we need to make sure that people are able to see and get that stuff and navigate our website in such a way that it's useful to them. But at the same token, we've got this whole component of people who like to read print. And they're not, because people think they're just all older people. They're not all older people.
No.
There's people between the ages.
I'm not older. I like print.
Yeah. Well, we got people who are as young as 12, 13, 14 years old who pick up our print copy. So it's a matter of what's in there and making sure there's something that's relevant to them that catches their eye, that makes them want to pick up a copy of the newspaper. And so there's a lot that goes into it these days, and being an independent, community-based newspaper, because you have to be on so many different platforms and think about so many different things that are going on in terms of engagement and audience, and how to reach and connect with people, especially get them information that they want and information that they need. And so that's where your resources as a news organization get stretched, right? Because just like these organizations we talked about earlier, they've had to do a lot with a little. Well, organizations like ours have always had to do a lot with a little, just Black organizations and Black businesses in general. And then when you look at what's going on in the media landscape these days, people are like, oh, newspapers are going away, they're a dinosaur, they're dying off. And the reality is that community-based newspapers, local newspapers that are weeklies or whatever they are underneath this dark cloud that's been cast over them by the major dailies across the country, and the struggles that they've had. And the struggles that they had is because they had a flawed business model. Their business model was, back in the day, their cash cow was the classified advertising. So whether you sold a lamp, a book, whatever it was, you had to put an ad in a local daily paper for then classified ads. And those things could be 50 pages thick, a couple hundred pages thick on a Sunday, and they financed everything out of that, right? The entertainment page, the sports page, all these different things, the gardening section, home, they financed. And then when that went away because of the internet, right? Other sites were popping up that allow people to Craigslist and all this other stuff. Those took those resources away. And so those are the financial problems, the advertising problems they had. And so now you've got bigger companies who are trying to experiment with social media and taking resources away that should have been allocated to traditional media outlets that have a track record of what they're doing and a strong audience. And so those are some of the things that we have to overcome. At the same time, organizations like ours, our print distribution is expanding. More and more people are looking for a paper. The thing about gentrification, we're a neighborhood publication. Now we're a regional publication. And so we've got more people who are getting eyeballs on it. And so that's something that should be noted. We also have more people who are visiting our website, trying to get information about whatever it is that's going on in our community. And so those things should lead to us, getting more resources, but we're not, because of the dark cloud that's been cast over us by major dailies and the struggles that they've had.
And I think it's important to point out too, and you and I had this discussion previously. People assume you see this newspaper and it just kind of appears, right? And they don't realize, like you mentioned, the back end, the resources, the staff, the manpower it takes to do the printing, the deliveries, it's a whole process, process that I think people just they this newspaper's here and now I get to read it, and they don't realize that, again, circling back to that kind of putting back into the community and supporting organizations like yours, why it's so vital. Okay, we just got a couple minutes left. So real quickly, I like to do this with all my guests. 2 truths and a lie. So I've never played this game before, which I'm sure you have. I'm sure you guys have out there, right? Anyway, I asked Chris to think about 3 things. He's going to tell me. And 2 of them have to be true, and 1 is not going to be true. I'm going to try to guess which is which. So, okay, Chris, go.
I'm going to make it real easy on you this time. So I'm going to keep it with the Real Housewives. And 2 of these Real Housewives I have met. 1 of them I have not.
Oh, okay. Let's go.
I'm going to give you 3 names: Sheree Whitfield,
Sheree, okay,
Giselle Bryant, and Kenya Moore. 2 of them I've met. 1 of them I have not.
Giselle, Kenya, and Bryant. Okay, let me think on this. I'm going to say, yes, you've met Kenya Moore. And yes, you have met Giselle Bryant, and you have not met Sheree.
Well, you're incorrect.
Oh, dang it! Who did you meet?
I met Giselle Bryant. And I've also met Sheree Whitfield. I have not met Kenya Moore.
You haven't met Kenya Moore? Okay, I just assumed Kenya because she's kind of out there more than the rest of them, right?
Yeah.
And I know you being you go to all these little fancy soirees and affairs, and I mean, you met, former President Obama, and you met your slew of celebrities, but very cool, very cool. You stumped me indeed. New Kenya was one of them, darn it. All right, Chris. Well, tell people where they can find your publication and where we can find you online and all the things, how they get in touch.
Okay. The Seattle Medium newspaper, you can find us all up and down the I-5 corridor, either through newsstands or merchants near you. We also at all of the libraries, King County libraries and the Seattle Public Libraries as well. You can check us out online at seattlemedium.com. The other thing that you can do is check out our Support Black Orgs initiative. The website is supportblackorgs.com. Again, supportblackorgs.com. But also you can visit us on a daily basis for updated news at seattlemedium.com.
All right, there you have it. Thanks so much, my friend. Always good to chat with you and see you. And until next time, be well, stay safe, and we'll see you all next week. Later, peeps.